I've recently turned 30, and with every round birthday, you start to think what you've been doing in your life exactly. When I was 20, there were some things, but now the world looks very different to me, so the perspective I've had changed a lot. But as for the question what exactly I've been doing, I would say that the main thing I've been doing is building a system of thought. So when I was 13, I first started to become interested in philosophy. At that age, I received my first philosophy book, and it really got me interested in how the world works, how to win arguments, teenage stuff like that. This interest stayed with me for quite a while, and I ended up also studying philosophy, where in 2018, so with 24 years, I've earned my Master of Arts degree. Until then was probably the most prolific time for my philosophical thinking, and then for the past 6 years I've been mostly confirming and adapting some of my philosophical thoughts while I became educated in the fields of natural science. As you may have noticed, there are some common thoughts in the videos I've done previously. So mostly I've been interested in scientific topics, but also topics as reproduction or more generally evolutionary thinking, and cultural topics such as nutritional science has always been interesting to me. But this has never been in the way of how this is generally pursued, which is often what can you eat, what should you eat. This is not so exciting for me. But here in this video I want to present my thinking in a more systematic manner, so that maybe why I choose certain topics and how I choose them will become more clear. So first off, the starting point for me was always that we are in this world and in this life as individuals. Now this sounds like a given, but for me it has always been clear that the smallest possible unit to think about from a philosophical perspective is the individual. Of course, the individual is born into a certain environment, into a certain culture. This shapes him. But the individual also shapes the culture. He shapes the group, the environment he's in. So for me, the main question has always been, if I am here as an individual in this particular world, if I am built out of certain atoms combined in a very specific way, what are the preconditions so that I can really say, it is this what I know? And for this, first off, the individual has to have freedom of thought. So if an individual is able to take up influences from his environment, be able to process them, not just let himself be influenced, if he is able to take on the thoughts he wants to take on, so if he has what I call agency, then an individual can be said to have freedom of thought. If an individual has freedom of thought, then he is able to freely choose. And this doesn't mean that he chooses independently of the environment which restricts him, but it means he strategically chooses how to interact with the restrictions he is given. Now, what restrictions are there? As I've previously mentioned, there is an old nature versus nurture discussion which I dislike, because it is always portrayed as if one would be essential and the other is not, even though we now know both have a considerable influence. Now I, as an individual, consist of genes, I consist of a brain structure, etc. So I am restricted by what is my biology. For example, if I have a malfunction in my genes, it could be that I am unable to walk. This restricts and defines me as an individual. But this biological influence is gradual, so it goes from a very clear influence, for example in the case of Huntington's disease, to things which are not clear at all, as for example my genes' influence on my personality. And then there is the influence of the environment. A clear example are natural disasters or air or noise pollution which directly affect my health. So when I talk about agency, I never talk about someone who can just do whatever he or she wants. But I'm talking about the ability to strategically navigate the restricting environment one finds himself in. In this form, even a slave has agency, even if it's just a little bit, to navigate the slavery that defines his current state. Now this automatically begs the question, so if agency is not a black or white matter, then to what extent do certain facts of everyday life restrict my ability to choose? my ability to decide things about my life. And this is what my videos are about. The critical aspect of my videos always lies therein that I often think that the determinism of things like nutrition, biology, medical conditions, etc. is overstated. And what I try to show in my videos is exactly why I think that this determinism is often weaker than is assumed. If we are free, as long as freedom of thought is provided, then this gives the state one primary goal, which is to educate its citizens in a way so that they remain able to filter influences from the environment in a proper way. Now this implies several things. 1. Statistically, it suggests to rather apply Bayesian statistics, since the Bayesian way of thinking implies to look at probability simply as subjective certainty. This automatically aligns with the individualism I have just outlined. 2. Politically, it suggests a strict form of liberalism, where individual choice and individual agency is the primary goal of the state and in a society. 3. Philosophically, it suggests the rejection of what I call group theory, which means interpreting events as the reaction of a homogeneous group of individuals to environmental circumstances.